Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets in flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brien Schmauch, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Welcome, Couch Coach Nation. College football is here. We've missed 7 games to talk about all the preseason stuff done. The games are here. I'm going to jump right in tonight. We've got Auburn at Baylor, and I'm going to tell you, Baylor is going to pull the upset tonight. They're an underdog. Baylor's got this. Also, you got Georgia going to Colorado, 4.5-point favorite for Georgia Tech. I like the Yellow Jackets to cover. I'm not the betting expert here, but it's college football season. I'm fired up. AV, are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. We're going to jump right into it. We got those couple picks right out of the way. We started off last weekend, Iowa State, Kansas State out in Dublin. I'm going to be honest, it was a pretty boring game for 3 quarters. And then the fourth quarter, everything kicked up and it got a lot closer. Iowa State, the major polls don't really love Iowa State. They were down there around 22. Complete BS polls got them at 13. I like where I was at. Iowa State's a really good team. They're going to be in it all season long.
Yeah, that game was a fumble fest in the first half. They just kept turning the ball over. Kept stepping on their own feet. But it did get good in the second half, and it went back and forth. It was interesting in the end. Iowa State, I thought, was clearly the better team. I felt like they controlled the game, but I didn't come away super impressed. 13 on your poll, maybe a bit high.
We'll see. We got a long way to go. It's only one game in.
Only one game. You're right.
So we're going to talk a couple big games here this weekend. And then later in the show, we've got Ryan Miller, former Ohio State linebacker, coming on. He's going to talk the big game of the weekend with us. That's Ohio State, Texas. But let's start off with LSU Clemson Saturday night. When I look at this game, I'm thinking we've got Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier. Can somebody jump out to an early lead in the Heisman race? That LSU secondary, LSU has been bad defensively for the past couple of years. They've got 3 out of their 4 in the secondary are brand new. What's going to happen there with that passing game for Clemson in the LSU secondary? And then LSU, they're looking to break a streak of 5 straight season-opening losses. What do you see on this game?
I think it's like a matchup of returners versus reloaders, right? Clemson returns like 80% of their production. They return their defense. LSU does return Nussmeier, but they got a lot of newer weapons on the outside and some new offensive linemen. Clemson does have a new defensive coordinator, which will be interesting to see, but he's a good defensive coordinator, and they've got plenty of talent. I don't know, man. I think Clemson wins this one going away. I think they're the better team, the better roster with the better coach, and they're at home at night. Like, I feel like this is a bit like, other than Nussmeier being able to put up numbers and then potentially being able to score some points to keep it close, but even that scenario I don't think is guaranteed with Clemson's defense. So I give the edge to Clemson pretty comfortably, not blowout for them, 10 points or so.
If anybody's followed our preseason stuff, I love Clemson this year. They're my pick to win the national title. They're my number 1 team. I'm not sold on Brian Kelly for anything more than a 9-3 kind of campaign. That's a Brian Kelly coach team. This is all Clemson all the time. They're loaded both sides of the ball. LSU's still got a lot of questions outside of Nussmeier. And I just don't see this game being the 1-score game that the line has it as. This is Clemson, like you said, 10 points or more. I definitely like the Tigers. Then we got Alabama coming to Tallahassee for Florida State. The big question, I think, for Florida State fans is, do they look like they even belong on the same field with Alabama? Because coming off of last year's 2-10 mess, they looked confused and embarrassed in games. And I think if they can just look like they deserve to be on the same field with Alabama, that's a win, regardless of what the scoreboard says. You've got offensive coordinator that's brand new, defensive coordinator brand new for Florida State. Alabama's got a new offensive coordinator coming in Ryan Grubb. So there's a lot of moving pieces. Florida State has 49 new players on their roster. So this isn't the same team that they had last year. Is it going to matter at all?
I think it'll matter some. If we played this game last year, the score might be 1,000-0. But look, when I look at Florida State's team, I actually like the first team, at least on offense. I like Deuce Robinson, Squirrel White. Castellanos is an upgrade from what we had. The running back room is much improved. Even the offensive line, you got Micah Pettis and Pettibon and those guys. It's just going to be better than last year for sure. Then you got a new defensive coordinator who's exciting. I don't know if we'll be better on the defensive side, but I assume we will. So, yeah, I think it matters, and I think they'll be much improved. But I think this first game going against Alabama, who's got a significantly better roster, much more stability, more size. Yeah, they're just a better team. I don't think Florida State keeps it close. Maybe they keep it close into the second half because Alabama has a freshman not a freshman, but a new quarterback starting on the road. So maybe you can get to him, rattle him, confuse him, and maybe we can keep it a game for a while, especially if the weather was tough. But the big concern I have with Florida State is not being able to throw the ball. I think if Castellanos can throw the ball at a competent level, maybe my mind changes on their season. But if we're just relying on running the ball down Alabama's throat, I don't like it.
And you mentioned the weather. From what we've been seeing, it's going to pour in Tallahassee most of the day. That could have a big impact on the game, especially with turnovers. Tim Keenan, starting defensive tackle for Alabama, appears to be out for a couple of weeks now. You never want to rely on injuries, but that could be something that helps Florida State with that new offensive line. 4 out of 5 starters are new. Gunnar Hansen, the left tackle, he was part of that Vanderbilt team last year that beat Alabama. So he's no stranger to playing against Alabama in SEC competition. Micah Pettis on the other tackle coming in from Ole Miss. So they're used to playing this kind of game and the team with that sort of talent that Alabama's going to bring. Gus Malzahn, new offensive coordinator, he likes to run the ball, about 276 yards last year at UCF. Florida State's going to run the ball a lot, both with Castellanos and that backfield, Roydell Williams, Croma, etc. They've got a lot of running backs there. They're going to look to run and run a lot. I have the same question as you do. Can Castellanos throw the ball? You've got, I think, some decent weapons there, but I don't really know if he can push the ball down the field. I think they're going to have more success in the passing game by looking at Randy Pittman and Landon Thomas with the tight ends, and then maybe you get a shot down the field. But with a wet ball in the rain, I don't know that this is going to be much for them to show what they can do in the passing game. Tony White, I like the defense that he brings. It's an attacking defense. I think the strength of the Florida State defense is in the secondary. He runs the 3-3-5. So that plays right into the Florida State strength. It's just not enough. Florida State does not have the talent, the players yet to play with Alabama. They got to look like that they should be on the field. That's the measuring stick for me, but I don't see Florida State winning this game. Alabama is clearly a much better team and better roster. Next game we want to look at is Notre Dame going down to Miami. Notre Dame's bringing in new quarterback C.J. Carr. How can he settle in? He's never even attempted a collegiate pass, and he's got to go up against that Miami front seven. You've got both teams have new defensive coordinators. Notre Dame, Chris Ash, Miami, Corey Heatherman, really talented defenses, but how are they going to make adjustments throughout the game and put those defensive players in the right positions? And then what's the Miami passing game look like? Cam Ward's gone, enter Carson Beck. But Miami also lost their top 6 receiving targets from last year. What are they going to look like in the passing game? What are you seeing on this game?
This one's tough to me because Miami is at home. I think Miami's going to have a better passing game than Notre Dame just because of the C.J. Carr as being a new starter, a first game on the road in Miami. What is good for a young quarterback is a good running game and a good defense. And I think Notre Dame has that. I don't think C.J. Carr will be put in a bad position or not in a position to succeed. And on the flip side, I guess Carson Beck taped his arm back together over the summer. But he's got some, even though they lost their top receivers, they have some talent out there on the outside. So he's going to have some targets to throw to. They've got a good offensive line. It's a tough game for me, and normally I would take the home team, but at the end of the day, when I look on the sidelines and see Marcus Freeman versus Mario Cristobal, I'm just gonna go with Notre Dame to win this one some way, somehow.
Yeah, when you look at that and typically who's the best player on the field on either side of the ball, either side of the field, it's Jeremiah Love. Give the ball to Jeremiah Love. Let him run behind that big Notre Dame offensive line. Notre Dame's historically had some really good tight ends. You can dink and dunk a little bit with your tight end. You don't have to have CJ Carr have a big game. Manage the game, play within yourself. Don't turn the ball over. Rely on Love. Rely on your defense. Playing down in Miami, it's not a big home field advantage. This isn't the old Orange Bowl. There's going to be just as many Notre Dame fans in there as there are Miami fans. So the fact that it's in Miami doesn't really play into anything for me. As far as the Miami passing game goes, they need JoJo Trader to step up and be the guy. You may not know that name if you follow recruiting. He was a top 70 recruit coming out in 2023. He was the other wide receiver at Chaminade Madonna with Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. So no slouch in himself, but you're going to need him to be that guy that Beck can look to make big plays, convert third downs. I go with you, the same thing. It's Jeremiah Love. It's the Notre Dame defense. I think Notre Dame gets it done. We're going to get your take on the big game, Texas, Ohio State. I'm going to hold my pick for later when I'm talking with Ryan Miller, but what do you see in this game?
I can't wait for this game, to be honest. I haven't had this much anticipation for an opening game in a while. Not just because it's two big names, but there's some cool storylines in this. I can't wait to see Arch Manning and Julian Sand. I'm really interested to see how both of them play in full games against a top opponent with the spotlights on them. They both have a lot of name recognition. They both come in with a lot of hype, and I want to see how they play. So that's very interesting. Then you got Sark versus Matt Patricia. I can't wait to see who does what. It'll be interesting to see Matt Patricia as the Ohio State defensive coordinator anyway, because I think the sky's the limit. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. He's got all the talent in the world. So that's interesting to me. You know what else is interesting is Jeremiah Smith. Obviously, we all can't wait to see him play. Last year, he put up 1,300 plus yards as a freshman. Historic freshman season. BS, do you know how many of those yards he put up against Texas?
3.
3.
One reception.
3 yards, one catch for 3 yards. That ain't happening this year, my man. He's going to come out this year, assuming Sayan is competent as a quarterback, which I'm sure he is, and he is going to put up a big game. He still has Carnell Tate, and I guess Brandon Ennis will see the field this year, and Quincy Porter, I believe, is the freshman that's really good for them. So he won't be the one-show person, but it'll be a Jeremiah Smith game. Texas got a great defense, great offense. Both teams are loaded. I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going Ohio State. If it were in Texas, I'd go with Texas. If it were on a neutral field, I would probably go Texas. I think Texas is my number one team this year. But this will be an epic matchup, and I'm picking Ohio State to win since they're at home.
Okay. So one of the features that we're going to bring you all season long is AV's Book Club. Now, this is not your mama's book club. We're talking Sportsbook. So for all you gamblers out there, get ready because AV is going to hit you with some sure bets for this weekend. What do you got for me?
All right, let's go. I got 4 bets for you.
Okay.
Now, you can either play these, fade these, or parlay these. It's up to you. The first one, and 2 of these we've already talked about, so I'll just give a little bit. But Alabama minus 13.5. I think they beat Florida State by 17 plus. Knowing Florida State and being somewhat intimate with their roster, I think I'm okay on this one. 13.5, lay the points for Bama week 1. Florida State will get better as the season goes. They'll be a much better team than last year. They're running into a brick wall week 1. Clemson minus 3.5. We talked about this. I like LSU's potential to score, and that's about all I like for this game for LSU. I think Clemson has the defense to slow them down greatly. I think Clemson has the receivers and the quarterback and the offensive line to score a lot of points. They are at home. They have the better coach. LSU doesn't win openers. It's only 3.5. Lay the points all day long. Then I got UCLA plus 6.5. They're playing Utah. They're at home. I love me a home underdog. Both teams finished 5-7 last year, but UCLA is was getting better throughout the year. Their 5-7 was improving throughout the year. Then they go into the offseason and get a win when Nico falls in their lap. So they're going to come out with a better quarterback, a lot of confidence. They're playing at home. They won't be as physical as Utah, and that kind of scares me, but they take the points. They may not win the game, but they'll keep it within 6.5. And then my last one is Indiana. Kurt Signetti. He's got a reputation for never taking his foot off the gas. When they blow someone out, it gets ugly. They're going to win in a blowout, and it will get ugly. Lay the 23.5 points and count your money all the way to the bank.
Good picks. I like it. My bonus pick for the week, Tulane at home. It was laying 6. It's now at 6.5. Make sure you get it before it moves up to 7. Tulane's at least a touchdown better than Northwestern. Get it before it goes to 7 so you don't push 6 or 6.5. I think that's a money play right there. AV, appreciate it. Everybody stay tuned. We've got Ryan Miller coming up, and we're going to talk Ohio State, Texas. Hey, Michael, welcome to Complete BS. We want to know our partners as people, not just products. So let's dive in and tell me what made you start Campus Course.
Hey, Brian, it is a pleasure to be on with you today. Campus Course, my background is in college athletics. I was a Division I athletic director for 15 years. Traveling across the country, I got some great vantage points of stadiums and crowds. And for me, the colors always stood out. And so I had a goal and a vision to bring a brand to life that was rooted in those college colors. And Campus Course is here.
So, what makes your shirts different than what other fans may see somewhere else?
Yeah, it's all the quality materials you're used to seeing across the board, right? These are performance shirts. The difference is where there's a lot of men's brands that have collegiate collections. We're a collegiate brand. We're rooted in that, and we're happy to bring a new take on men's apparel to the market. And so you'll see us do some fun stuff with the logos, offer some customization. You'll also see us provide our golf club partners an opportunity to put their logo on there as well, which is a lot of fun.
So having that cooling material, that's great on the golf course, but also great for tailgates and football games. I absolutely love that.
Tailgates and tee times, that's what we're here for.
Where can people get your shirts?
The easiest place will be on the website, campuscourse.com, one word there. As we grow, you're going to see some more and more of your private golf clubs and your resorts. And so that's a fun niche for us as we continue to expand. And so look for us at either place.
And for all of our listeners out there, you can use the discount code BS20 and save 20% on your purchases at campuscourse.com. Welcome back, Couch Coach Nation. We are joined today by Ryan Miller. We might have a little breeze in the background as he's outside, but I'm super excited to have Ryan with us. Ryan is from the same hometown as I am in Allen Park, Michigan. He was elected into the Athletic Hall of Fame for his accolades. Well, he was playing both football and basketball at Allen Park High School. He played outside linebacker for Ohio State from 1993 to 1996. He was Ohio State's Iron Man winner in 95 and in 96. His senior year in 1996, he was a starter and notched 93 tackles and 3 interceptions on his way to being the co-defensive player of the year and led that defense to the 1997 Rose Bowl title. After graduating, Ryan ventured into broadcasting, hosting a radio morning show and later appearing on television in Columbus. In 1999, he joined former teammates Luke Fickell and Mike Vrabel to launch the Second and 7 Foundation, focusing on promoting childhood literacy by distributing books and encouraging reading through athlete-driven outreach. The foundation has since expanded to hundreds of schools and colleges nationwide. Now, every Thursday and Friday, student athletes are reading to second graders thanks to the work of Second and 7. Since 1999, Second and 7 has read and donated over 1 million books with help from over 170 universities and high schools throughout the country. On top of all of that, he co-founded M2 Marketing, a Columbus-based web and graphic design company where he serves as the CEO. I don't know where he finds the time. That's why he's out at a field multitasking. Ryan Miller, I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I wish my mom and dad were around to hear all those nice things you just got done saying about me.
Absolutely. And don't forget your brother, Gordy. I'm sure being the younger brother, he'd have to tell me, no, that's not all true. That can't be my brother.
That's absolutely right. He was a heck of an athlete, too, and he's an Allen Park Jag Hall of Fame member as well.
So Going way back to our younger years when we were both at Allen Park, I got to start with this. I know this is a college football podcast, but I asked you about it in an email, and I got to ask you about it in person. Tell me about shattering the backboard at Allen Park, because I need to hear about this. I didn't know if it was just urban legend or if my memory was foggy.
Man, it's so funny how that happened. And I'm old enough to where Facebook came out after we were in high school. And one of the first things that some of our classmates from Allen Park were like saying on that Facebook was like, hey, man, I haven't seen you in a while. Remember when you shattered that backboard? So, yeah. So, what happened was, I'll give you the whole story. We didn't have glass backboards. Okay. We had old school. You go to a parking lot right now and you see a backboard like that. That's the kind of backboards we had at Allen Park. So, our senior year, they raised the money and they put glass backboards in the gym. We were actually out playing baseball. It was like a baseball practice and it was raining. So we come inside and we're like, kids just horse around. I'm like, give me a ball while everyone else is changing and getting ready for whatever. I was like, I'm just going to dunk a couple times. So I literally throw one up, run, jump, and I take two hands behind the back and I dunk it and just, it shatters. And it's right around that time the school was being let out. So a lot of people are in the gym. They see me shatter this backboard. Glasses everywhere. I'm thinking I am in so much trouble for breaking these brand new backboards. People are grabbing glass. To this day, I think my parents have some of that glass in their house. But I remember getting called into the athletic director's office and I was like, man, I didn't do it. I wasn't hanging on the rim. I wasn't trying to do anything. I literally just went up, dunked it, and it shattered. Long story short, the guys that installed it, I don't think they did a good enough job because it wasn't quite flexible enough. They tightened it down too much. And so once I just actually dunked it, it shattered the glass. So yeah, I guess I got something in common with Shaquille O'Neal.
Very good. And with Allen Park, if you've paid attention to downriver Michigan football, the Detroit area, you know the name Ed Bellis. Tell me a little bit about playing for this legendary high school football coach.
I think he was probably one of the most influential people in my life as a young person. That's why I think coaching and teaching is so important for young kids. And he was just an old school, no nonsense kind of guy. He was a little bit of a perfectionist. If you're in a 3-point stance and your foot isn't quite right, he would be fanatical about it. He was very much blocking and tackling, very old school. We would really practice the fundamentals. And so he really prepared me. I think Allen Park football prepared me for life after football, but really prepared me for Ohio State, because when I came to Ohio State, I was used to a certain level of expectation, a certain level of commitment to those fundamentals that Coach Bellis was just obsessed with. He would use an old school projector to watch some film. And now our guys were doing that back then. And he would just be obsessed with just the finer things, the chess match of football. And he just really enjoyed it. And, it kind of rubbed off on me. And I just enjoyed it ever since. He was just kind of the godfather of football in Allen Park. And that's why Allen Park has had so many great teams.
So as you're getting into your junior and senior year, you're starting getting noticed a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your recruiting process and what schools that you were looking at. And then John Cooper was able to pull you away from the state of Michigan and bring you to
So like
Columbus.
I was obviously Michigan's really close. So I had been to some Michigan camps and won awards and had gone to their recruiting days. And shoot, I went and watched Ohio State, Michigan when Desmond Howard scored the touchdown and hit the pose. I was on the sideline as a recruit. I was a recruit. It was crazy as I was a recruit for Michigan, and the Free Press came out that morning and I was on the cover as the all dream team players in high school. And I got a phone call from Bill Young, who was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. He says, Ryan, we're jumping on the bus to go play Michigan. I know you're going as a Michigan recruit, but at least look over and wave at us because we really want you to be a Buckeye. And so that's the kind of recruiting kind of stuff that I had. I remember thinking Ohio State was probably my last choice next to Michigan, Notre Dame, Boston College, and Ohio State. I really went to Boston. I fell in love with everything there in Boston. I'd never really been on a Allen Park, downriver Detroit. And you go to Boston, it's holy cow, it looks like another world, another country. And that was really impressive. Tom Coughlin, who coached the Giants, was the coach at the time for Boston College. So I really wanted to go there. But my dad was like, why don't you wait and get through all your visits and then just you make your decision and then call them back. So I remember telling Tom Coughlin, hey man, I'm going to call you at the end. I got 3 more visits to go. And he says, okay, but we really want you here at Boston College. But then that next week, I went down to Notre Dame and they're showing us the gold helmets and the gold dome and all the grotto and all the different traditions and the 4 horsemen and all this stuff. And Blue Holtz is the coach. And I'm like, Dad, man, maybe this is where I need to go. He's like, you only got a couple more visits left. Why don't you just hold tight? And I said, sure. Okay. So I tell Coach Holtz, and he says, where else you going? And I said, I got Michigan and then Ohio State is my last one. He goes, oh, you're going to love Ohio State. Please just commit today. I said, no, I got to wait. So then I go up to Ann Arbor that next week, and Gary Moeller was the coach at the time. And same thing. I'm like, I grew up in Detroit. I had been to that stadium, the big house. I had been to Chrysler Arena. I knew my way around campus a little bit. I had always thought, boy, it'd be cool to run into this stadium when you're a little boy. And I remember some of the players when you were a kid that were famous for Michigan. And it was just an awestruck kind of thing. Man, maybe I should come here. My dad said, man, you only got one more week left. Just tell him. So I tell Gary Moeller, who, by the way, was captain at Ohio State. Okay. So he was the captain at Ohio State. Lou Holtz had coached at Ohio State. And so there's all these ties back to Ohio State. So I remember driving down 23 with my parents, just thinking about, okay, Michigan or Notre Dame, what do you think? Because we're starting to rule out Boston College, a little far away, not really Midwest, a little East Coast, maybe too East Coast for me. And I'm not sure. We're going pros and cons. Lou Holtz amazing, this and that. And so we walk into our time at Ohio State. And I get around these guys, and they all seem, I'm looking around, and these are the best players in the Midwest. Lorenzo Styles and Corey Stringer and Luke Fickell and Rob Kelly. And these guys are just unbelievable players. And I'm like, man, these guys are a lot better than any of the players that I've been to these other visits. And they want me to play here. It's what Coach Cooper did, which was different than the other coaches. The other coaches would pull you in individually, and they would talk to you one-on-one in their office. Coach Cooper had a big breakfast, and he had all the guys around and all their families. And he got up and he started to have this big speech about how we're going to restore the pride at Ohio State. We're going to win the Rose Bowl. You remember, back then, winning the Rose Bowl was the thing. That's all you could hang your hat on. There was no playoff. There was no extra games. It was like you win the conference and you win the Rose Bowl and you are forever. That was the crowning achievement. And he's like, we're doing that with this group in this room. And he says, Corey Stringer, stand up. And he's as big as a house. Stands up. He says, I want you to look me in the eye right now. Are you going to be a Buckeye? And he says, Coach, I've always wanted to be a Buckeye, and I'm coming to Ohio State. The place starts cheering and clapping. So then he goes to the next guy, Lorenzo Styles, stands up, and he's going around the room, and everyone's saying, yes, I'm coming to Columbus. So now I can tell, we all know what's happening. He's coming to me. He's coming to me next. I look over at my dad, like thinking to myself, what do I do now? This is not part of the script. And my dad just looks over at me and goes, so I said yes to Coach Cooper. We go over, we get in the car afterwards. My mom looks at my dad and says, Dennis, what the heck just happened? I'll never forget. He says, I'm not sure, but let's get to a bookstore to buy some Ohio State gear. And we came back to Elk Park with a bunch of Ohio State gear, and we never looked back.
That's a great story. So coming from a smaller school in Michigan, Allen Park, good football, not a huge program. When did you know when you were at Ohio State, okay, I can play at this elite Big Ten level? What was there a moment, a time, whether it's practice or in a game, that it just clicked and you're like, okay, I can play at this level?
So that's a great question. In the fall, when I first got there, I was skinny. I wasn't getting any reps. The only thing I could compete in would be like wind sprints. Literally, I wouldn't even get a rep. So like I would stand around all day. I wouldn't even get on the scout team. And then when it's time to run and condition, I would be on the line. I thought to myself, I am going to beat everyone in these sprints. And so I just challenged myself to try to win every sprint. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of the coaches recognized me for my effort, right? And then I would just live in the weight room. And I asked our coach at the time, strength coach, they said, hey man, I need to put on some weight. And he's, okay, here's what I want you to do. Every morning, I want you to drink a whole glass of whole milk, eat cereal with whole milk. At lunchtime, drink another glass of whole milk with your food. And then at dinner, drink another glass of whole milk. And so I drank whole milk, like going out of style for the entire fall. I gained about 25 pounds. I was significantly stronger. And in that spring, I remember hitting somebody. And I hit him so hard because I had so much weight on me and I could still run. That's what I thought, oh man, I think I could totally make this work. And then when I had my first interception in a practice, now I had that confidence that, okay, because I've been learning and I've been knowing what to do. They just haven't given me a chance. Now that I'm out here, oh, okay. And so it all just fell into place. And then once you get a taste, you just want to keep working harder because it's such a great feeling to be able to go out there and participate
And Ohio Stadium's one of the legendary venues in college football. What's the first memory that comes to your mind when you think, I'm running out of the tunnel into Ohio Stadium?
I'll never forget when we were driving to my visit, coming around. That's probably one of the biggest things that sold me on Ohio State. When I came around and saw the stadium, for those of you who've never been to Ohio Stadium, it looks like gladiators are about to do business in that place. And if you're a defensive player, it's exciting. We played in a ton of stadiums, and a lot of them are large or they look a little bit newer or whatever, but there's nothing that quite has that Roman Coliseum feel to it. And it feels we're going to go in there and it's going to be like burn the ships. We are going to go full throttle and it's going to be amazing. And that's kind of my memory. But when I think back, like I'll go to the Ohio State Texas game this weekend and I'll go into the shoe and it'll be just like, I feel a lot of pride for being able to play in that stadium because there's so many guys prior to me playing from 1922 on. And then since, and guys that can keep playing. And I'm just so proud to be able to say that I was able to do that. And I'm so happy for these guys that they get this chance. And it's just such a special thing. And I know the older guys always say that. And I feel the same way about Mark Anglin Field at Allen Park. I feel the same way, the train coming by and just the specialness of Friday Night Lights. So there's just something cool about having those forest green and winter white unis coming out with Jags on your helmet. I'm ready to go. And it's just fun memories. And I tell people all the time, when I go to bed at night, even today, when I'm dreaming, I'm not dreaming about watching the Jags or watching the Buckeyes. I'm dreaming about making a play for the Jags, making a play for the Buckeyes, because that's how exciting it was in my life.
Absolutely. And you mentioned like at Ohio State, the pinnacle was getting to the Rose Bowl. Growing up in the Midwest, that was always who's going to the Rose Bowl. Michigan, Ohio State. Every once in a while, Michigan State or Iowa would get in there, but typically Michigan or Ohio State. What was that like being able to play in the granddaddy of them all? That's every Midwestern kid's dream.
For sure. And so I had never been out there. I'd only seen it on TV. It was almost like going to the moon. And so when we flew out there, Coach took us over to the stadium. We walked around. And you see the mountains in the background and the scenic view, everything you remember from the TV. In the pristine, it's like for a golfer to go to Augusta when it's like everything's perfect. That's the way it was at the granddaddy of them all at the Rose Bowl. And so I remember thinking to myself, I've got to get my headspace right because I feel like a little kid out here. And when we won the Rose Bowl, probably one of my favorite moments. I remember looking in the stands, seeing my parents, seeing my sister, seeing my brother, just thinking how many times I had dreamt of that moment. I dreamt of that moment from the first time I ever snapped a ball to my brother in the backyard and played tackle football in the backyard, man. We wanted to be in the Rose Bowl, and here we are, Rose Bowl champs. And it was just so special. And I can't say enough about the experience.
Beat Jake Plummer in that game against Arizona State. Ohio State always has had great players. And I was looking at some of the guys that you played with on your defense. You mentioned Luke Fickell and Mike Vrabel. We talked about Sean Springs. You had a young Andy Katzenmoyer just inside of you there. On 94, first overall pick, Big Daddy Dan Wilkinson. 97, first overall pick, Orlando Pace. 95 Heisman winner, Eddie George. All these guys you played with, all of them at Ohio State. What's that locker room and practice like?
Well,
these are legendary names.
You mentioned Joey Galloway, Robert Smith. Those guys were on my teams.
Eric Glenn,
Ricky Dudley, Orlando Pace. These guys were unbelievable. Going to practice, I try to tell people, going from Allen Park High School and then walking into an Ohio State practice is like a light year. Going from Ohio State, I had a cup of coffee with the Jets, right? Going from Ohio State to the Jets it's like a step. It's one step. Going from high school to Ohio State, it's like a staircase. It's just so significantly different. And because at Ohio State, you're playing with and against, in practice, pros. Every single guy in that field literally has a chance to play in the NFL. Guys on the second team have a chance to play in the NFL. And so that's the kind of talent we had. And it's super competitive. But yeah, man, I always say that the jump from high school to college is significant. College pros is not as significant because, especially if you play at a place like Ohio State, you see it every day in practice. I tackled Eddie George more than anybody in America because we played against them in practice every day. So I had to go against Orlando Pace every single day. So go to the Jets was like, oh, this guy isn't as tough as Orlando.
Yeah. Before we get into the Texas-Ohio State game, I wanted to touch on the Second Seven Foundation that you started with Luke Fickell and Mike Vrabel. What inspired you guys to start a foundation back in '99 and choose child literacy as your cause?
So Woody Hayes is famous for the phrase, you could never pay back, but you could always pay forward. And so he instilled in the teams he coached this pay it forward mentality. Like, you should always be doing something for someone else. That will come back to you, but you're not doing it in hopes that it comes back to you. So you're constantly paying forward and it comes back to you. So when we got to Ohio State, part of the athletic department was going out and being involved in philanthropic activities. And one of them was reading to kids. It wasn't a program, though. It was literally, if a school called the football office and said, hey, can you get a football player to come over here and read to us? They would do it. And so when I graduated, I decided, one of the things that might be neat is to create an actual program that's consistent for these kids and for the student athletes to be able to read. And so what we did was, that first year we had a football camp and we decided we were going to read to second graders and raise as much money as we could. We raised enough money to read to second graders at 7 schools that first year. So we called it Second and Seven. The next year, more kids came to camp. We got to go to 15 schools. The next year, companies started sponsoring different things and we went to more schools. Then we decided to write our own children's books. We've been writing children's books for the last 18 years. We just came out with our most recent one because it's cheaper for us to write them and print them than to actually buy them that have been published. So we're able to get to more. And by the way, we can control the message about teamwork, commitment, patience, practice, and persistence. Kindness is contagious. So we do that throughout this entire time. But it all came back to that little seed that was planted at Ohio State about paying it forward. I can tell you in retrospect, when your heart's in the right place and you do things full speed, good things happen. And they'll go beyond your wildest dreams. So that was exciting for me.
That's amazing. To bring it back to football a little bit, there is a big game at the Shoe this weekend. The coaches poll has it as number 1 versus number 2. In the complete BS poll, I have Texas at number 3 and Ohio State as number 5 in my preseason poll. So I have a little different opinion there with the coaches. But because of the playoff now, whoever loses this game is by no means out of the national championship picture. It's a different world now with the playoff. However, I will say that the 1983 Miami Hurricanes are the last team to lose a season opener and then go on to win the national championship. So we got a little history there, even if it was in a different era of football. How do you see this game shaking out? What are you looking for when you think about this game on?
It's one of those games where college football fans love to see early in the season. College football is such a popular sport. We all want to see the best teams play each other. And you like to see them play early in the season because you've been waiting for this all year long. And to have a season kickoff with Ohio State, Texas in Ohio Stadium is really amazing. And the way I look at it, Ohio State lost some players offensively that were difference makers. The quarterback was a difference maker. The running backs were difference makers. So you're going to have a little bit of a question mark based upon first game of the year. First game you ever play, you're going to make some mistakes. I had a coach say once, young players make young mistakes. And you really, there's no way you can learn unless you make a mistake. And you can make a mistake in practice, but until you make it in front of 105,000 people, it doesn't set in the same. And I think some of our young players may make some young mistakes, but they've got some young players too. It's the first game of the year. So Coach Cooper used to have his 10 commandments versus every game. So my thought process is his number 1 commandment was always the team that makes the fewest mistakes wins the game. I think that's pretty true for this contest. If we take care of the football, if we don't jump off sides, if we're not getting defensive pass interference or some defensive calls, I think if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, if we're not making mistakes, I feel really good about it because I think the other team is going to first games of the year, you just make mistakes. So the team that makes the fewest mistakes in a game like this, where both teams are ultra talented, is going to win the game. Now, Archie Manning, everybody's been talking about him. He comes to Ohio Stadium. He has to face a defense that is we've got a lot of guys on our roster that have played significant minutes. Now, we may have lost a couple of our edge guys, but if you really followed Ohio State last year, we rotated guys in at that position all year long. So it's not their first game. It's just the first time they're starting. They've been experienced. So I think that they'll get after the quarterback. I think we've got the best defensive back in the nation. We've got some good linebackers. I think it's not going to be as easy for Arch Manning as everyone says, especially when you come into Ohio State and when people are just jacked about this game. And playing on the road for your first start in the environment that we're going to have with all the chips on the table, you can guarantee they're going to make some mistakes. And so we just need to make fewer. And I think then it'll be fine.
Yeah, I look at this and you got coaching turnover at Ohio State with Brian Hartline taking over as the play caller. Chip Kelly's gone from last season. Matt Patricia brings an NFL pedigree and his schemes to college. So how both the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator settle into their respective positions. Patricia, of course, is an experienced defensive coordinator. It's just a little bit different with 18 to 22-year-old kids versus the older, more mature pro players. They met last year in the playoffs. Ohio State obviously coming up on top. Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State, he had 1,300 yards. He only had 3 against Texas last year with 1 catch. Obviously, he's going to need to have a big day with Julian Sain starting his first game for Ohio State. You mentioned players that Ohio State lost. I look at that, and I think Ohio State's got the best player and the second best player in college football with Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. But they lost a lot. 2 running backs, offensive line, the defensive line. There are a lot of new people in those places. Ohio State replenishes their roster as well as anybody else in the country. There's some younger, a little bit inexperienced players versus some of the veterans that they had last year. That will be a factor, I believe, in this game. Like you mentioned, young players yet make young mistakes. And then you've got Arch Manning on the other side. All of the offseason hype is over. Can he deliver? Last season, Texas ranked 101 nationally in red zone touchdown efficiency. When they get into the red zone, they got to get 7, not 3. That's going to be a big difference maker in this game. Obviously, I said I've got Texas at 3. I've got Ohio State at 5. So I do think Texas is the better team. They're on the road in the Horseshoe. I'm going with Texas to win 24-20.
And like you said, regardless of what happens in the game, both these teams will be ranked in the top 10 on Sunday. It should be fun to see from that standpoint. I think you were mentioning before the new coordinators for Ohio State. It'll be fun to see how Hartline, who I think he's an amazing recruiter, amazing coach, really, I think the world of him. It's fun for me to think about what he's going to do to get Jeremiah Smith the ball. Because, look, you're a better coach when Jeremiah Smith gets the ball. Let's just face it. And on the flip side, Patricia's got a chance to use a guy that's so talented in various ways that not a lot of people have that kind of a player. And so it'll be fun. There's no doubt in my mind, both of these teams are talented enough to win the game. And that's why I say, man, whoever makes the fewest mistakes, and I got to give the edge to Ohio State just because you're playing at home and that crowd is not going to really be loud when we're on offense, and it's going to be a nightmare for the offensive Arch Manning and the boys.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. We're looking forward to it noon on Saturday. Stay tuned. We're going to be back next week on Wednesday rather than Tuesday. We've got a holiday on Monday and more football Monday night. So we're going to come back with next week on Wednesday, and we'll be back on Friday also next week with John Colasar from Michigan previewing the Michigan-Oklahoma game next week. Stay tuned all season long to Complete BS.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.